Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mark from SolarGames, and today we're going to talk about the strange, maybe crazy price movements that we've been seeing in February across the board in all collectible worlds, but very, very seriously in Magic the Gathering and also in Grand Archive, right? So I think maybe the same group of people are buying things up. Maybe we've hit such a bottom that everything, you just got to go up from there, right? But essentially, what has happened in the last, I would say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks is that the entire market is definitely recovering. You can feel it across the board, right? So, at first, I noticed this when I started. I remember last year, April, I sold to the patrons the complete edition bundles, and back then I told you guys hey, these things look really unique. They're really different. They're really strange. Just different. I'm okay with holding some of these products long term because I just have such good memories of them in general, right? So, okay, let me remind you, for those that don't remember what these complete editions are. Okay, I'll be right back. Look at this. I got one right here. So, it's these things, right? So, the Phyrexia Obi-Wan complete edition bundles, right? So these are kind of cool because what essentially these were giving you is you got this special Phyrexian Arena promo version. You also got a shit ton of set boosters. So you got 12 of them in this bundle. Then you got these full art foil lands, and then you have these two mythic rare oil slick raised version of the mythic rares in the set, plus 10 extra. I think it's 10, right? Yeah, 10 extra oil slicked raised foils. So these are texturized foils that are in really unique printing. Essentially, that has never been done before and since then. And so, of course, these things would raise in price, right? I looked at the thing. I think back then I was able to sell them to patrons for, I think 120 was my price. Now, they did tank a little bit underneath 120. I think the lowest I remember seeing them were around 109. But then very quickly, all the boxes kind of went up to 120, 130 and just stabilized. It didn't do anything. It was sitting there at 130 for, 6 months to a year. Fast forward to January, end of January, early February, these boxes went from 130 to 140 to 150, and recently I've been making sales at 160. Now, that's not going to be true for everyone, right? Obviously, I have some reputation on TCG players, so some people actually prefer to buy it from me because they know they're going to get a good product, get it shipped quickly, etc. But that's besides the point. But what I'm saying is I'm converting sales at 160 for these boxes, and I still have some left, so I'm basically selling them through the inventory, right? And I told patrons back then, this is back in, I think, April last year, I told them, hey, if you want this product, I have it. I can sell it to you at 120, and this is the price. But after we sell, this portion to the patrons, I'm keeping the rest. And I think back then I had probably, I think I kept around 40 to 50 boxes of these. So that would be let's see, so it's almost 8 to 9 cases. I think that's right. I'm thinking the size in my garage for the cases and how tall the stack is. I think it's about 8 to 9 cases, right? And that's basically what I kept for myself. And throughout the sales, throughout the year, just kind of slowly selling them, but recently selling like crazy. I'm down to 2 cases left, and I'm almost out of this product. There's gonna be probably a case, 6 or so, I'm gonna keep for myself for long term, forever. But the rest of it, I'm expecting to just sell out now and collect the profits, right? So at first I thought this is localized to that one product. Then I looked across the board and noticed other things, right? Neon Dynasty is up. So if you remember Neon Dynasty, now if you're from the on release of Neon Dynasty 2 years ago, you would remember there was a weird supply thing that happened where on release the product kind of tanked to 170, 180, but then quickly shot up to 270 because people realized, number one, it was really hard to get the neon ink, whatever version of Hidetsugu. So this is the super collector rare type of thing. In addition to that, there was no supply. Everyone bought out all the boxes on the market and there was nothing left. So the boxes went crazy up. But then there was a secret secondary wave that happened. A lot of stores got them. So suddenly the prices tanked back down again around that 200 range, right? This is, so for those that, for the kids that don't know, this is prior to all the serialization stuff. This is effectively the first collector's booster that we had. Is it, by the way, is it collector's boosters, right? Collector's boosters. It was the first wave of collector's boosters that we had that essentially had a chase item. Before that, it was just oh, cool, you get the special treatments, you get more foils, you get more chances of getting more rare cards. So think Eldraine, Ikoria, those kind of collector boosters. They were more focused on just it's a little bit more unique, and more foils, etc. But now, since foil equity in Magic is dead, I mean, there are cards on the market, by the way, where the foil version is worth less than the non-foil. I mean, that does say something about the foiling, right? So yeah, it sucks. People don't want the foils, and there's just too many of them. So, of course, Wizard of the Coast has had to implement other rarity things inside the collector's boosters. It's something like, hey, Halo foil, whatever, Rainbow foil, this, that foil, whatever. In addition to that, there's also the exclusive cards, and then in addition to that, there's the stupid like serialized cards, right? So all this stuff is added into the collector boosters to make it more appetizing for players, or I guess collectors really, to go purchase this item. Now, that kind of mostly worked for most sets on release, but it didn't really work for a lot of sets. Like Dominaria United, for example, it kind of shot up because people were like, wait, you can get Legends cards? But then they realized Legends cards are also just like $7 on average, or less, or $4. So you didn't actually want the Legends card. You just wanted like one or two of the Legend. Moat, Tabernacle, those are the kind of cards you want. The rest of the stuff, you're like, whatever, I don't really want it. And that's the problem, right? So you had this case where it was a teeter-totter, like super high lottery, and it's just like old cards. There's nothing like, I think for the newer players, it was not exciting to open an old card, right? It's not foil. It may not even look like a, I don't know, very expensive card. So there's that problem. And of course, they changed this with Brothers War, where they just straight up introduced serialization, okay? So there's like, I think 32 cards, if I remember correctly. I did the math on this, but it was a long time ago, so you got to excuse me on this. But it was like 32. I think it's like 32 cards they did. And then they were like, hey, these all have serialization up to 500. So there's like, X number of like serialized cards out there. Then from that point on, they just started doing serialized cards for every set that has collector boosters, and just packed full of them, right? And we have like, what's the new one now? Like Fallout has a collector boosters. And of course, that thing is going to have serialized cards as well, but there's like some weirdness with like how many are actually serialized. So I think Wizard of the Coast is trying to figure out also like what's going on. Again, marketing not keeping up with actually like R&D, not keeping up with product, etc. They're all getting kind of confused because no one knows what's actually going into the booster to explain, right? So this is like the classic Gavin video where he's like opening. No, not Gavin, what's his name? Blake. And he's like opening booster boxes and he doesn't even know what those things are. Like he's like, oh, I guess I get one of these. And oh, this is the special spicy insert slot, whatever. He doesn't even know, right? Because there's so many things that go into a booster box now, or booster pack now. So fast forward to today. What you're seeing right now is the market is recovering. What I think is happening is that we were way too negative on Magic, right? And obviously Wizard of the Coast is turning things around, and it's very obvious from both the supply of Karlov Manor. And look, don't get me wrong, I still have suspicions about how much they actually cut print run wise and whether this is a holdback of inventory or not. I believe what has happened is that after pre-release, they were Wizard of the Coast and distribution were very strict during pre-release this time around. A little bit prior to this, they were doing basically full product dumps to every store. It doesn't matter who you are. If you want product, you could get it, right? Type of release for pre-release. This time around, they were a lot more like holding things back for pre-release. And then, of course, players went to pre-release, felt like the set was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. And so the product demand wasn't too high. Now, the problem is Wizard of the Coast is still sitting on product. What they were hoping for is pre-release, super hype. People really want more product and they can't get it. And so, of course, on the release week, when they released like the full floodgates of the rest of the product, that would be absorbed by the market. What actually happened was pre-release, people went in there super hype or somewhat hyped going in, but kind of like, lukewarm coming out. The products were coming off the shelves, but it kind of just satisfied everyone who needed cards. And then beyond that, everyone else is kind of like whatever. Now, second wave still hit the market as planned, but the problem is now there's no demand. So that's what you're seeing. Price is dropping for Karlov Manor, like, everything's falling out of the sky. I mean, people are like, this is like Wall Street, sell, like, level of like panic on collector boosters, play boosters. And I guess like overall, it's pretty obvious now. People don't like play boosters, right? Like it's this more expensive version of a draft boosters. And the draft people are like, I don't want to see this many rares. And the, collectors are like, well, if you make everything, uncommon or common, then what is rare? Like now I don't, I don't really need all this extra cards. There's a list card, there's an art card, all the things that people don't care about. And there's a, crappy, useless foil that a lot of times, because of the curling issues, can't even be tournament legal. So it's a card that you literally take it out and you have to like I don't know, you got to like put this thing in a cigarette like dehydrator, or else you basically have a card you cannot play at a tournament, right? It's pretty bad. So basically, people hate what's happening with Karlov Manor. Obviously, there's some issues with the product, but also some issues with supply and how they're releasing the product. But overall, I think it is pretty clear Wizard of the Coast is kind of like trimming down on print runs, because again, if you watch my video from yesterday about, the whole Hasbro earning call, you can tell they are very serious about cutting back on product. There's things they can say to the public, as WotC, and then there's Hasbro corporate saying things like, hey, we're reducing inventory. We understand that it's a glut. And of course, they're talking across the board for all toys, but that also means included Magic Gathering, right? So it is pretty serious. They are going to reduce print runs, which is what we're seeing now. However, the issue, of course, is just because they're reducing it now doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be huge. We don't know what that reduction is. If they reduce it by let's say 10%, it's technically still a reduction, but I don't think that's going to be meaningfully impacting the actual market, right? But I think what's happening is that signal is becoming clear across the board. So a lot of players who kind of look back and say, why would I pay $150 for a play booster when I could go get a set booster of something I like, Dominaria United, Brothers War? These are all great sets, right? And then pay this price instead, right? And people were probably thinking like, if I pull a Shieldred, that's like $80 or whatever. I don't know if that card is still worth that much, but I know that card is like the Ragavan of Standard, right? Basically, so everybody wants a Shieldred. Yeah, this is the problem, right? So like you have a better alternative product, and so of course people were looking at it and saying, why don't I just pay money into this? And along with that, more players are like looking back at the older product and raising the entire like I don't know, the tide that's lifting all ships to say, hey, everything should be worth more. So that's what we're seeing. I'm also seeing a little bit of an uptick on older cards. So maybe this is like people kind of going back to school and then, from the winter break and then like starting Magic again in their local communities, at school, colleges especially. And then they're realizing, hey, I need these cards to play, right? Or new commander decks are driving certain archetypes, and then that's promoting certain cards from being or purchased, etc. So I can see that the entire market is starting to turn the other way, right? So there's this if you think about the curve here, we were kind of going through this curve right here, last year. And of course with Ixalan, Eldraine, whatever, Wilds of Eldraine, we're kind of turning back here. So it does feel more like in this little depression, hope, relief type of situation here, right? Before, of course, we get to euphoria. So we're not there at all. We're in this recovery phase. That's how it feels right now. So what would I do, right? I mean, given that we're in this phase, you're probably going to ride it up for a while. There probably are still a lot of product that's pretty much underpriced or single cards. So I would highly recommend going after those or looking into those here and there, right? How many time? What's the time code on this? Okay, 13 minutes. All right, let's spend the last 5 minutes talk about Grand Archive a little bit. So I know recently, of course, I have actually a lot of new patrons who are really interested in Grand Archive. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, Grand Archive hits on both the gameplay side. If you like Magic for gameplay and complexity, Grand Archive has that. Grand Archive also hits on the collectability that Magic cannot touch. I'm going to be honest, Grand Archive is infinitely more collectible than Magic the Gathering. It is infinitely more desirable to collect, and it's actually kind of fun because there's population reports. So I don't need every card to be serialized. And if you pull a really cool card, right? I guess I realize none of these are really cool, but for example, you take this card, right? Here's a CSR, or in this case, a special one. It has a golden signature, all that stuff. The artwork is amazing. Yeah, infinitely collectible, very fun thing. A lot of people really like Grand Archive. I personally really love the gameplay. I kind of came for the collectability. I stayed for the gameplay is how I guess I tell people now. Okay, so let's talk about Grand Archive prices. As many of you guys know, watching my channel, there was a big fiasco with Grand Archive and the whole Fracture Crown FTC drop where basically way too many boxes were printed for the current market, right? And I kind of get why Weebs did this. So if again, putting myself in Weebs' shoes, and I'm just guessing because I don't know these things. I've talked to some of the devs, but look, I'm not going to ask certain questions, and I'm sure they're not going to tell me the answers, right? But reality, what I think happened is something like this. Look, The Grand Archive is still kind of figuring things out. They have standard boxes that are like this rectangle shape, and they have these expansion boxes that are more like a square shape, right? So obviously the printer, the whatever kind of machines that would make the two boxes, etc., are going to be slightly different. So there's a little bit of that. Plus, just like they want to make sure this FTC is a one print run and done set, right? And this set is supposed to print enough boxes to last for like all of Grand Archive's growth for the next X amount of years. Let's just say 3, right? Before they come back and reprint some of the cards from the set. And so that's why they printed like way too many boxes. And you can kind of fault Grand Archive for this, but it's kind of nice that a company is this transparent. Grand Archive actually releases print run numbers. Not after, not a year after, not never, but before the product drops. It's insane, right? So basically, they told everybody this is how many boxes are going to be out there. There were some other issues with it too, where they were trying to make sure that stores didn't have a feel bad, so they gave a guarantee of one like collector super rare per case, which caused this problem of like stores and just bad people opening cases where they would hit the CSR and then sell the rest of the boxes. Essentially, the rate of pulling a second CSR is much lower in the box than the first one, right? So there was no reason to open the rest. Basically, these are soft box situation, which caused like this collapse of Grand Archive FTC boxes, where the boxes, the single booster boxes, were like, I think at some point as low as like during the sale era was like coming down to 50, and Weebs had a minimum advertised price, I think it was like 74, I believe. And of course, they had to like basically cancel that because a ton of stores were breaking that policy because they had to kind of like chase each other to the bottom, right? Because of soft boxes, all those other issues. So fast forward, to like about 3 months ago, I noticed that the market was so low. I mean, I was buying like FTC boxes for like around $30 each or 35. And basically I bought from the 30s all the way until like about 40, 45. And then I kind of cut it off because 45 is like, hey, that's pretty fair, I think, pricing wise. But me, like Mark, scummy, investor here, I can't buy fair boxes. I don't make money on fair. I buy undervalued or overvalued or whatever, right? Sorry. So, gotta give all the secrets out, guys. Hey, shut up. Stop giving the secrets out. All right. Yeah, so, okay. Got me distracted a little bit. So basically, I was buying this stuff. FTC had a situation, right? So that caused the game actually to come kind of like, I don't know, into a depression. I saw a lot of cards like CSRs from FTC especially are really depressed. The pricing is around like, what, $200 for a CSR, which is kind of insane, right? Like really low. But with the release of Alchemical Revolution, I've definitely noticed an uptick. And there's something different now, right? So obviously, number one, this is a much bigger set. People are really excited. Players are looking at the cards and saying, whoa, there's like new cards and there's new things and new this, new that. And they're really excited about that. In addition to that, there's more like collectability in the set as well because there's a lot more cards. The card pool is larger. To actually get a playset of every card, you actually have to go open quite a bit of product, which means there's also a lot of cards that are available for players, who are not collecting playsets of the ultra rare cards, right? So there's kind of like a really interesting dynamic that's happening with ALC that I haven't seen with FTC or even Dawn of Ash first set. And so what that's causing the market to react is like, I'm seeing like, for example, a card from Dawn of Ash called Frost Swarm Paladin, okay, is like, it used to be around $4, and this is an uncommon. So just, hey guys, like all the Magic players out there, there's an uncommon card printed not even a year ago, okay? And the box is still out there for like $80, $70, whatever, $75, $80-ish. And there's an uncommon in there, that box that's worth $4, but recently went up as high as $14, now back down to around $12, right? And that's kind of insane because what's happening is players are realizing that's a really good card. That's kind of like a must-have for a lot of these like water ally decks. And so people are looking at the card and say, hey, I need another copy. I need 4 copies. And so it's pushing the whole thing up. What this is telling me, it's a pretty good signal, I think, that Dawn of Ash, that Grand Archive as a game is gaining players. Because if there's not a lot of players, who's buying this like key, why are they not just buying every card? Why are they not buying booster boxes, buying this one card? It's because for playability, right? And so I can tell you right now, this game is gaining traction. There are more and more players coming into the game, especially since Grand Archive is hitting nationals and worlds very soon. So A lot of players are looking at decks and looking at different ways to kind of like combo, and they're looking at ways to kind of basically build a whole deck, and that's what we're seeing. But then along with that, in this Alchemical Revolution like set, there are certain super rares, SRs, right? They're like really expensive. There's this card called Academy Guide, and it's effectively what's a good for my Magic audience. What's a good audience? What's a good? It's like Dark Ritual. Think like Dark Ritual level of goodness, right? Where you can just trade 1 mana for 3 type of thing, and maybe continuously. Imagine like, okay, it's like, okay, Lotus Field, right? Maybe like Lotus Field is a good, or Nykthos. Think like it's like Nykthos, okay? Really good land, generates a lot of value if you keep it long term, right? It's like that, and then that card is like $40 now, but it's in this current set right now, right? In addition to that, all the booster boxes, I've talked about this before too, are still going up. I think they're like, right now I'm checking, they're like 109 or something on the public market. It's insane. So prices are going up for the sealed, but also for the singles. And it totally makes sense because if you look at the situation here, I mean, the market's doing really well and everyone wants Grand Archive and they can't get enough of it, right? So what I think is happening, right, is that, of course, each one of these card games has its own reason, but I think from last year, the whole depression of card games, etc., really hit a bottom, and now we're finally doing a recovery. Oh, and one last thing. For whatever reason, right, cryptocurrency, actually I know the reason, but cryptocurrency and collectible cards are very like tied at the hip. I think a lot of people who collect cards are also heavy investors in crypto, and right now, crypto, Bitcoin especially, is very high, right? So you can see this is correlated. So maybe people were exiting out of their crypto positions and putting that back into collectible cards, which is pumping up all the prices as well. So there's that. I think I've said a lot. I will just leave it at that. Right now is a pretty interesting time. I think we are seeing some market recovery for collectible cards and TCGs in general. And so we'll ride it out. And this is the thing, like I keep telling you guys, like there are times when it's super dark, right? And it looks like it's bleak and all that stuff. And the people who win out long term are the people who can just stay the course, keep going. You do whatever is minimal necessary. You don't change your strategy. Keep going forward. Trust in the card games that you like, right? And then keep pushing forward because times like this will come too, and then you'll be hit. A lot of stores, I bet you, are like kicking themselves in the foot because they were kind of going into Alchemical Revolution thinking it's another FTC, right? Fractured Crown, and it's not at all. And so we're about to go into the next set, Mercurial Heart, and I wonder what stores are thinking. Are they going to treat it more like FTC, or are they going to treat it more like Alchemical Revolution, or what? I don't know. So I guess I'll update you guys as I see more data, but we'll see. All right, so that's going to do it for me for today. I'm Mark from Solar Games. Stay classy. I love card games.